In the Epic Times, they review a new study done in the UK looking at dry eye disease. Now, dry eye disease is something that literally affects, tens of thousands of people, so it's a pretty big deal. And what they looked at in this study is not only the dry eye disease itself, but how it actually harms other areas of your body. And people who have dry eyes, what they found is that there's many health conditions associated with it. So what I want to do is break that down from like a holistic perspective and really give you some natural things that you can do in order to start solving the dry eye problem. And also look at other problems that may be going on in the body that are associated with causing the dry eye syndrome as well. So let's go ahead and jump into this. Study links dry eye disease with broader health concerns and other health conditions. Patients suffering from dry eye disease face vision problems, and new research shows how this condition can also harm physical and mental health, which is pretty interesting. The study shows that patients have a lower quality of life compared to those without dry eyes. Now, dry eye disease is a condition that affects many people of any age, but it is most prevalent in women and older people. Now, I know people who are in their 20s that have dry eyes. I wouldn't, I guess based off people I know, it's not just older, but according to this, they're saying older people. It's estimated that up to a third of adults over the age of 65 have this condition, which includes symptoms such as irritation, redness in the eye, blurred vision, and sensation of grittiness in the eye. This is typically the one I see people face, is the grittiness in the eye. They just feel like when they're blinking on almost like sandpaper, In this new study, led by the University of Southampton, exploring how dry eye disease affects the lives of adults in the UK, it included 1,000 patients with the condition and 1,000 without. All patients were required to answer a questionnaire from the National Eye Institute about their visual function and their EuroQOL questionnaire. Let's just say EuroQOL questionnaire on health-related quality of life. Participants who declared that they had experienced dry eye were required to answer further questions to assess the severity of the symptoms. So basically, what they found is that it was found that a higher proportion of participants with dry eye disease has problems with mobility, okay? So this is interesting because first of all, mobility, but then they also experienced more difficulties in their day-to-day activities compared to the patients who didn't have the condition. The study also revealed that they were more likely to suffer from depression and anxiety. So when we look at this is kind of interesting because mobility, you're thinking musculoskeletal, okay? And why would they have a problem with mobility? Is it really their joints that are an issue? Is it maybe their motor function? Because it's also showing that they have a brain issue, right? So if you look at depression and anxiety, well, that's more related to a brain problem. So we're going to circle back to this, but we're thinking here possibly joint issues, but possibly neuromotor issues and also brain problems from what we see right here. Now, let's go ahead and go a little bit further down here. Patients with the most severe symptoms were more likely to report a negative impact on their social and emotional function and work productivity. The findings suggest people with dry eye disease have problems carrying out daily activities and work productivity due to adverse effects on visual function. Now, this is pretty interesting. The study provided some very useful information on the burden of dry eye disease places on patients, as well as confirming the impact on work and social lives. We also discovered that the extent of effects are consistent with the severity of the symptoms. We also found that participants with dry eye symptoms were a lot more likely to have other comorbidities. Okay, this is where we have to pay attention again. Twice as many suffered from arthritis. Okay, now we're thinking, ooh, an inflammatory issue. Hearing loss, that's an interesting one. Or irritable bowel disease compared to the cohort without symptoms. Okay, so now what we're seeing is somebody who has dry eyes, they have mobility issues, they have depression, they have anxiety, they have arthritis, and they also have hearing loss and irritable bowel disease. Okay, so when we break this down, there's a couple things I would say about this. First of all, is that we do know that it's very important for brain health to have proper amounts of omega-3s and DHA. Well, the other thing that is very important for is going to be dry eyes. People who have dry eyes can, in many cases, just take some omega-3s, some omega-6s, and then they can literally reverse the condition altogether with that alone. Now, when we look at the mobility issue, once again, maybe it's a brain issue, but also maybe it's a joint issue. Omega-3s are incredibly powerful for both brain health and joint health. So once again, we're going back to those omega-3s, and maybe the reason that they're having dry eyes is because they have a lack of omega-3s in their system. And maybe that's also why they're having the brain issues, because when we look at anxiety and depression, highly related to just lack of omega-3s, but also related to an inflammatory issue that goes to the brain. Now, we determined also that they had arthritis, which is an inflammatory issue. So I think that there's a couple things to take into consideration here. And don't forget, though, they also had irritable bowel disease. And that's interesting as well, because if they were more likely to have irritable bowel disease, you have to wonder, did maybe the gut issues start first? Because what I found is that a lot of people who start to have these eye issues, they tend to have some gut issues that are causing them to have deficiencies because they're not absorbing their food well, or maybe they have a bacterial infection that's absorbing all the nutrients and they're not getting them. So maybe they had a gut condition that was pre-existing, which was causing nutrient deficiencies, which was causing brain inflammation linked to depression and anxiety. Now you see this like this web that we're looking at right now, because this is very interesting for someone who is suffering from dry eyes. You would look at this and you go, a lot to think about here. And so I would recommend, if you were to walk away from this just knowing one thing, taking some omega-3s is highly important. Taking DHA is very, very good and has proven to help the eyes in an enormous way. There's a lot of science out there on omega-3s and DHA for eye health. It's also very much proven to improve your brain health. I mean, I have all my people that I work with, if they're having brain issues, DHA is a big part of the protocol, high doses of DHA. So those are two things I would really look to if you're suffering from dry eye problems. Now, the other thing is I would definitely put an emphasis on reducing inflammation. And, in order to naturally reduce inflammation, I'd look to some curcumin or something along those lines. That's a great way to do it. And then supporting gut health. I talked about before in another video how I had a bacterial infection in my gut known as SIBO, small intestinal bowel overgrowth. And when you looked at SIBO in the conditions it causes, it can actually cause a deficiency in fat-soluble vitamins. And in this case, for me, that was vitamin A. And as a result of that, I was getting a lot of eye pain. So we have to kind of just, whenever these conditions come up, we can't just look at the condition itself and go, we just need to treat this condition. We have to look at all the tangled web that could be associated with it and get to the root cause. Because when I think of dry eyes, I don't just think, we need to pour some fake tears on my eyes. I think of, why is this happening and how do we fix it? I'll put some links in the description below to some different nutrients I would use in this case in order to support this dry eye problem.